The weather's closing in on us here. It's been snowing a little bit. It's been cold. You know, it's that end of season push. And everybody's doing a really good job.
The Yukon has seen its share of legends, but nothing like this. Parker Schnabel just unleashed the most explosive gold haul in modern history. From a secret cut buried deep in the Klondike, he's pulled an earth-shattering $110 million in raw gold. To put that in perspective, his own previous record was $14 million for an entire season. This time, he eclipsed it nearly tenfold in a matter of weeks. Rivals didn't just lose, they crumbled. Tony Beats, the self-proclaimed king of the Klondike, was caught on camera, muttering words fans never thought they'd hear. The kid owns it now. Rick Ness, half-broken already, sat alone in Dawson City, stunned into silence. Investors pulled their money from other crews, bankers shifted loyalty, and Discovery itself scrambled mid-season to rewrite the entire narrative. But the story isn't just about numbers, it's about power. With one secret cut, Parker has rewritten the balance of mining in the north. The Yukon no longer belongs to the old guard. It belongs to him. The markets felt it, the crews felt it, and the world is only beginning to realize what this $110 million strike means. Hit like and subscribe right now, because what you're about to hear changes everything. The roar of engines died without warning. One moment, Parker's fleet of iron beasts thundered against the canyon walls, tearing through frozen overburden. And the next, silence. Dust drifted, light cut across the hollow valley floor, and every man froze. It wasn't mechanical failure, it was something else. The ground itself shuddered, hollow and resonant, a sound unlike ordinary gravel. The kind of sound that makes even veterans glance at one another, as though the earth had just breathed back. Camera crews hesitated, unsure whether to cut or keep rolling, until Parker raised one hand and whispered, "Wait. Listen." His men obeyed instantly, their boots planted, their breath shallow, as though they already knew what was coming wasn't routine. For weeks, Dawson City had been alive with whispers. Parker disappearing at odd hours, fuel convoys leaving in the dead of night. Excavators rolled down back roads with their lights killed, like soldiers sneaking into enemy territory. Every miner knew he was hiding something, but nobody could prove it. Until tonight. One of Parker's crew bent low, brushed the dirt with his bare knuckles, and struck something buried. Not stone, not pipe. A ringing tonk, sharp and metallic, reverberated across the cut. The sound carried, unnatural, almost theatrical. The Yukon had spoken. Parker, usually a storm of orders, just stared at the ground, silent. For the first time in years, silence from Schnabel felt heavier than any shout. Rivals watching from afar would later admit, this was the moment the Yukon revealed a door. Because this cut didn't exist on any map. Not on mining charts, not in Yukon records. It was a ghost zone, its coordinates swallowed by government archives stamped with red ink. Inaccessible. Collapse risk. Legends tied to the ground stretched back to the Klondike Rush itself. Old journals told of crews who ventured here in 1898 and never returned, leaving behind fragments of diary pages warning of gold so rich it cursed the men who touched it. Elders in Dawson still recite stories of those missing expeditions, miners who vanished chasing a canyon that ate men whole. To most, it was myth. But Parker had proof. Using classified LiDAR scans, survey data whispered to have been smuggled out of government vaults, he became convinced that beneath those collapse zones lay a preserved channel untouched for over a century. And so the secrecy deepened. Loads of equipment crept through the night without permits. Wash plants were escorted like armored convoys. Even Discovery's own producers admit they were never given coordinates, only vague call sheets and backroad rendezvous points. This wasn't Gold Rush. This was a classified operation, hidden in plain sight. And as Parker's crew peeled away the first overburden, history itself began to show through. It wasn't dust. It wasn't fines. It wasn't even the small, satisfying pops of nuggets miners cheer for at the end of a long shift. The first material, torn from the cut, gleamed like nothing the Yukon had seen in a century. Chunks the size of fists, so heavy they sank straight through gloved hands. Kevin Beats, spying with binoculars from a distant ridge, dropped his radio before finally rasping into it. "Dad, he's pulling slabs, not nuggets." The words hit Tony like a hammer blow. On site, Parker imposed an iron curtain. No social media, no phones. Crew ordered to silence, even their families kept in the dark. Just as Oak Island relics were hidden under lock and key, so too did Parker bury the truth beneath secrecy. Clean-up mats overflowed with gold before the water had even drained. The crew wept openly, seasoned miners unable to mask the emotion as rivers of color coursed across the riffles. And then, like all secrets too massive to contain, the first whispers leaked. Dawson Banks, overhearing from truckers and suppliers, passed along rumors of figures no one believed possible. In 2 weeks alone, Parker Schnabel had cleared nearly $15 million worth of raw gold. Numbers so impossible, so unheard of, that even rival crews stopped their operations just to confirm it wasn't myth. The Yukon had just shifted. The throne of gold no longer belonged to legends. It belonged to a secret cut, and to Parker Schnabel. That revelation struck Tony Beats like a physical blow. The cameras catch the chaos before words even form. Tony ripping off his hard hat and slamming it into the gravel with a force that echoes across his claim. "This ain't mining. This is sorcery," he bellows, voice cracking with frustration, as his crew shuffles uncomfortably behind him, unsure whether to argue or remain silent. Kevin looks away, ashamed to meet his father's eyes. The empire Tony built on grit, diesel, and decades of dominance suddenly feels like it's crumbling in his calloused hands. Across Dawson City, the wildfire of rumor now had a face, a figure, and a name: Parker Schnabel. And the man once called the king of the Klondike could only watch helplessly. Meanwhile, Rick Ness spirals further into desperation. Viewers catch him late at night, headlights dimmed, idling outside Parker's forbidden cut. His face is gaunt, his voice hoarse, muttering to himself as though rehearsing a confrontation. "He cut a deal. No way this is real. I'll prove it." The cameras don't follow him inside, but the implication is clear. Rick has become less a miner and more a ghost haunting Parker's shadows. The man who once stood shoulder to shoulder with Parker is now unraveling into obsession, his story turning into a cautionary tale. Fred Lewis, on the other hand, chooses attack over despair. In a shaky live stream, he accuses Parker of being propped up by foreign gold barons, his words echoing through forums and Facebook groups. The conspiracy spreads fast, screenshots plastered with red circles and arrows suggesting hidden money trails and backroom deals. Some laugh, others believe, but everyone talks. For Fred, the accusation is a desperate gamble to stay relevant. For Parker, it only adds another layer of mystery. But the shock cuts deepest when Monica Beats, usually composed and steel-willed, speaks with rare vulnerability. "If Parker's numbers are real, we're finished," she admits, her eyes glassy on camera. No one can match that. It's the first public acknowledgement that the Beats dynasty, the machine that for years defined Yukon gold, might be undone by Parker's secretive stroke of genius. Even more telling, the Yukon Mining Board calls an emergency session, the first in decades. Officials fear Parker's operation hasn't just disrupted competition, it's destabilized the entire industry overnight. And then comes the number that breaks the silence: $50 million. By mid-season, insiders whisper Parker has already cleared the kind of money that once seemed mythological. Triple Tony's best haul, more than Parker himself ever dreamed of in past seasons. Numbers that belong in Vegas jackpots or Wall Street ledgers, not in Yukon dirt. And yet, behind closed doors, Dawson's banks are already moving differently. Brokers whisper, loans shift, fortunes pivot. Discovery, in a rare move, delays footage from Parker's camp. The excuse is technical issues, but fans online don't buy it. Reddit threads ignite, fans theorizing that producers are stockpiling the biggest reveal in franchise history. Some say it's to build hype. Others whisper Discovery itself can't control Parker anymore, that he's become bigger than the show. Meanwhile, in Dawson bars, Parker's crew is overheard, half-drunk and giddy. Forget $20 million seasons. This is Empire. One of them slams a beer glass onto the table, declaring they've changed history. The words spread like gospel through a town that runs on rumor. Soon, rival miners scramble to stake claims around Parker's site, convinced that veins of similar wealth might branch outward. But one after another, the requests are denied. The Yukon officials, once impartial gatekeepers, now appear strangely loyal to Parker, shielding his coordinates like state secrets. Conspiracies spiral. Talk of bribes filters in from Dubai. Rumors of secret investors with ties to oil fortunes swirl. Even whispers that Parker uncovered an old map hidden in mining archives fuel paranoia. And all the while, Parker himself refuses interviews. His silence becomes louder than any boast, feeding a storm of speculation that grows by the day. Rivals begin to collapse in the shadow of Parker's empire. Rick Ness walks off set entirely, muttering into the night, "No point chasing a ghost." The camera crew catches his truck pulling away, headlights fading into the Yukon dark. For Rick, the dream ends not with a triumph, but with abandonment. Tony Beats throws millions into fury, running his dredges at full tilt, clawing deeper and faster, but the ground gives him nothing. His crew, once loyal and fierce, shows cracks, men looking at Parker's figures and wondering if they're wasting their lives on a sinking ship. Fred's crew fractures from within. Some walk out entirely, tired of chasing shadows, while others seethe with jealousy as Parker's name dominates every headline. Fred's rants sound more desperate, less convincing, his grip on authority loosening as his credibility burns away. Through it all, Parker remains calm. He doesn't gloat. He doesn't celebrate. His silence cuts deeper than any words, like a man who knows something no one else can touch. Even his rivals admit it. His confidence feels unnatural, like he's mining not just gold, but secrets older than the Klondike itself. Monica's words haunt the season's midpoint. One man can't own the Klondike, can he? It's less a question and more a prophecy. For the first time, the survival of every other miner seems uncertain, and Parker stands alone at the center of a storm that has only just begun. And then the storm breaks in the weigh-in tent. The room buzzes like a battlefield command post, voices colliding in disbelief as a crumpled paper ledger slides across a table, proof that Parker Schnabel has stacked $85 million worth of gold, more than every rival crew in the Yukon combined. Numbers once thought impossible suddenly look small. His own career high, 14 million in a season, was now a fraction, erased like a beginner's tally. Even Discovery's executives, usually orchestrating the narrative, stand frozen. Cameras capturing men who have spent decades in this industry, realizing the scale of what they are witnessing. In New York, London, Shanghai, traders murmured the same name across glowing monitors: Parker. Futures markets hiccuped under the weight of a miner's haul. "The Yukon boy controls the flow now," whispered one broker, as if acknowledging a new monarch crowned not by politics, but by raw earth. Banks in Dawson processed deposits so vast that international alerts triggered, red flagging the transfers as though no single operation could possibly be legitimate. And back in the Yukon, Tony Beats stared into his whiskey, gravel in his voice when the camera caught his confession. Kid doesn't just mine gold, he bends the world with it. But where the world saw spectacle, investors smelled blood. They swarmed Dawson in convoys of tinted SUVs, briefcases snapping open under the bar lights, contracts waved like weapons. Blank checks slid across tables, promises of shares, empires, global syndicates begging for Parker's signature. He refused them all with a calm that unnerved more than any outburst. Men who'd toppled industries with billions walked away empty-handed. The refusal itself became part of the legend. Media headlines branded his hidden claim the Schnabel Vault. Anchors likened it to Oak Island's money pit, except Parker had cracked his wide open. Conspiracy forums boiled over, claiming he had unearthed a motherlode channel sealed since the Klondike Rush of 1898, preserved by cave-ins and guarded by superstition. Others whispered of forgotten survey maps locked away in government basements, somehow slipping into Parker's hands. The frenzy bred fear. Discovery tripled security. Black SUVs now circling the claim like a military base. Armed guards patrolled perimeters with dogs, drone spotters scanned skies, and floodlights painted the night white. Cartel rumors surfaced, whispers of syndicates in Mexico and Colombia eyeing Yukon's soil for infiltration. A veteran miner muttered that the gold no longer belonged to Dawson. It belonged to the world's most dangerous men. Parker, silent for weeks, finally turned to the camera one dusk, his hands black with grease, eyes heavy with sleepless fire. "This isn't luck," he said, voice low but steady. "This is the Yukon finally giving back what it's been hiding." The line echoed like scripture across social media, a declaration not just of discovery, but of destiny. And then, the revelation no one thought they'd see. The cameras rolled uninterrupted as cleanup mats dumped river silt, riffles spilling their secrets into trays heavy enough to bend wrists. Gold bars, bricks glowing like captive suns, stacked higher and higher on the scales until the counter froze. 110 million. The figure hung in the air like thunder after lightning, deafening in its finality. His crew erupted. Men who had spent decades breaking backs in mud collapsed into each other, tears streaking faces etched with dust and exhaustion. Some kissed the bars. Some simply fell silent, as though afraid that even speaking would wake them from the dream. These weren't just nuggets. They were monuments, physical proof that one man had rewritten every ceiling the Yukon had set before him. Discovery executives scrambled behind the scenes, their headsets alive with the realization this wasn't just the richest cleanup in gold rush history. This was the most profitable season of television ever. Networks prepared emergency press releases, stock prices ticked upward on rumors alone. Gold fever, once the myth of the 19th century, now spread again across a digital world. And in the shadows of the Klondike, rivals crumbled. Tony Beats, broken in a way the cameras had never shown, could only whisper, "The kid owns the Klondike now." The man who once called himself the king had been dethroned in real time, legacy snatched by someone young enough to be his son. Rick Ness, half lost to his demons, sat alone under neon bar glow, a bottle his only companion. The cameras caught his slurred whisper, equal parts awe and grief. We just watched a legend born. The Yukon, silent for centuries, had spoken again, through Parker Schnabel, and its echo carried far beyond the Klondike. Within hours of the $110 million revelation, gold markets convulsed like a heartbeat out of rhythm. Futures in New York surged, London's exchanges panicked, and Shanghai's traders scrambled to stabilize contracts already unraveling. For the first time in decades, a single miner, not a government, not a corporation, not a central bank, had bent the world price of gold. Analysts on television tried to explain it away as temporary volatility, but their voices betrayed fear. The Yukon had just destabilized the foundation of global wealth. Corporate giants moved next. International mining conglomerates, companies with fleets of jets and billion-dollar annual profits, launched hostile buyout attempts against Parker's modest operation. Letters arrived, stamped with corporate seals, each an offer to swallow his cut into their empires. But every time, Parker's answer was the same. No. The refusals weren't just business decisions, they were declarations of war against the world's oldest money machines. Independence became his shield, and in turning them away, Parker turned himself into something more than a miner. Meanwhile, Dawson City, once a sleepy relic of the gold rush, transformed overnight into a roaring boomtown. Streets filled with tourists clutching pans and metal detectors, convinced they too might stumble upon the next fortune. Hotels overflowed, bars stayed open until sunrise, and shopkeepers sold out of shovels, picks, even maps of the Yukon. Helicopters buzzed overhead, carrying investors, journalists, and opportunists, each hoping to get one glimpse of the ground Parker had transformed into history. But with frenzy came danger. Parker's claim was no longer just dirt. It was a vault, a fortress, a target. Armed guards now patrolled the perimeter 24 hours a day, searchlights cutting through the mist, while vehicles blocked every possible approach. Rumors flew of attempted heists, shadowy figures caught on thermal cameras at the tree line, a convoy of black trucks spotted before melting back into the night. Some whispered cartel involvement, others said rival miners had snapped. The line between myth and reality blurred, but one fact remained. Parker had to defend his gold like a king guards his throne. Global media sealed his coronation. CNN ran a week-long special titled The Yukon Empire. Al Jazeera called him the Emperor of the Klondike. European papers printed his face alongside monarchs and CEOs, and in Asia, commentators debated whether his independence posed a threat to financial stability. The boy from Haines, Alaska, was no longer just a prospector. He was a sovereign figure in the economy of the world. But Parker wasn't done. In a final, stunning announcement, he revealed plans to expand into untouched valleys, staking new ground beyond the reach of any rival. He declared that the $110 million strike was not the end, but merely phase one. The Yukon, he said, was still hiding deeper veins, and he intended to find them. Speculation ignited. Whispers of the mother vein resurfaced, that mythical channel of gold said to run beneath the Klondike, the vein that fueled the 1898 rush, but was never fully uncovered. Geologists on television debated whether Parker had already found hints of it in his cut, whether the bars stacked in Dawson were just fragments of a treasure still locked below. Rick Ness, drifting on the edges of collapse, watched the world crown Parker and muttered into the night, "This ain't the end. It's the start of something darker." His words, caught on a microphone, rang not as jealousy, but prophecy. Even rivals could feel it. Parker had not simply discovered wealth, he had awakened something vast, something dangerous. And as Discovery's cameras closed the season, they lingered on a single image. Parker standing silent on a ridge at dusk, staring out across unmined valleys, rolling into shadow. The wind tore at his jacket, the sky bled gold and purple, and his voice, barely above a whisper, cut through the silence. "We haven't even touched the real vault yet." The screen faded to black, leaving the world suspended between thanks.